Welcome to Government Contracting Weekly, sponsored by AOC Key Solutions Incorporated. Government Contracting Weekly is the only television program devoted exclusively to the competitive and dynamic world of government contracting. A world where coming in second place is not an option, but where principle-centered winning is the only approach.
Good morning, I'm Hilary Fordwich of Key Solutions, and welcome to this special edition of Government Contracting Weekly, where I'm joined by a wonderful panel of leaders as we discuss the critical subject of teaming. In today's difficult and unprecedented business environment, where there is the very real likelihood of less government contracts coming into the market, teaming has never been more important to our government contracting viewers. That's why I'm pleased to have with me today Lisa Martin, the founder of LeapFrog Solutions. Good morning, Lisa. And also Tom Romeo, the President of Federal Services for Maximus. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Kelly.
And Kelly Terrien, the President and CEO of Summit Technical Solutions. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Hilary.
Some of our viewers may not be so familiar with your companies, so please just take a moment to tell us a little bit about your background and about your company. And Kelly, I'd love to start with you.
Thank you, Hilary. I'm the founder, president, and CEO of Summit Technical Solutions, STS. It's a position I've held for the last 12 years. I love my job, and I'm so fortunate. I have a wonderful business partner. I'm surrounded by a great management team, and I don't think anyone could ask for a better employee team.
That's great. And how many employees do you have?
We have nearly 400 employees today, and we are throughout the United States and Germany. And our headquarters is in Colorado Springs, and we have a branch office in Lee Summit, Missouri, Huntsville, Alabama, and Ramstein, Germany. But I should tell you what we do.
Yes, yeah, and our audience, yeah.
Our core competencies are IT and systems engineering, logistics, operations and maintenance of communication systems, and professional and administrative services focusing on record keeping.
Great. Colorado Springs, that's a really tough place to have to go to visit when you have to go to your head. Someone's got to do it, yes. Tom, tell us about your firm, Maximus.
Sure. So I'm the president of Maximus Federal Group, and I've been with Maximus for about 2 years now. Been in government contracting for probably about 12 years, and had a career with IBM prior to coming to Maximus. Maximus, our mission is to help government serve the people. And by that, what we do is we run programs for the government and focus on getting better outcomes for those programs and doing it very cost effectively. We have about 9,000 employees, about 240 locations, and an example of one of the federal programs we run is we do Medicare appeals. So if someone puts in a claim for a Medicare benefit and it's denied, we have lawyers and nurses and physicians who will look at the appeal for that denial and make a determination if they were treated fairly.
Wonderful. And those 240 locations, all in the U.S. or?
No, we have international
as well.
Australia, the UK, Saudi Arabia, and Canada.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tom. And to Lisa, LeapFrog Solutions, I know you've been a long-standing member of MBTC, but tell us more about LeapFrog for the audience.
Thank you. Thank you again, Hilary. I founded LeapFrog Solutions in 1996, so we've been in business almost 17 years now. We are a federal communications management firm and located in Fairfax County. And we're the smallest of the teams here, so we are a woman-owned small business. Again, I'm founder, CEO, and president. And our focus is primarily with Department of Homeland Security, and our largest client is with FEMA, with the FloodSmart campaigns. And so we've been working now on this contract, and would love to talk more about it with the teaming agreements. It's a joint venture working with 4 other agencies or 4 other companies as well.
And how large are you in terms of employees
So
now?
we're the smallest here.
Yes.
We have a little over 30 employees.
You've grown a lot since
and we have
first
grown.
met.
We've moved 3 times now. So just celebrated a year in our new space and built that out to make it a very collaborative environment. One of the things that we do, we're all about making your message matter. And with the government, it's really about making their mission matter. And so in each of the agencies that we've worked with, we work both with outreach and in-reach programs. developing the different technologies that we use and supporting. So we'll support call centers. Love to talk more to Kelly.
Yes, and about that. And
with
speaking
Tom.
about that, talking about more with Kelly, I mean, that's what we're going to hear to talk about today, which is about teaming. In fact, actually, Lisa, you and I have kidded a lot, I know, about frenemies. And in the marketplace, people will be one day an enemy, of course, or a competitor rather, and next day teaming. Talk about teaming a little bit. Tom, let's start with you. Why do you want to team, and what do you look for when you're teaming?
So there are a lot of good reasons to team. I think the most important one is to bring the best value to the customer. So when you look at your core competencies as a company and the needs of a government agency, sometimes the needs are much broader than your core competencies.
So you need to jump in and have something else, and you're looking sort of a promise from somebody else you're bringing to the table. Kelly, would you agree with that? And what are you looking for?
Certainly. What we're looking for is bringing the best skills and capabilities of each company to the table so we can provide the best solution for the customer with the less risk.
And what about the best way to go about then teaming, Lisa? When you're looking at the situation, what do you look for?
Well, and it was something we had talked about earlier too. The minute we meet each other, we find out each other's strengths and how we can leverage those for the government, and obviously making sure that it's the most cost-effective solutions. Kind of like Hollywood management, if you think about it. You start a production, and then you want to make sure you've got the best resources. And I think teaming both with large, you have the relationships, and small, you're able to turn on a dime, be a lot more flexible. It ultimately is a great savings for the government.
And then the government wants that now because all the pressure is about cost cutting,
absolutely.
and it's all about bringing to the taxpayer the best offering you possibly can.
Absolutely.
So teaming helps with that. Yeah, thank you. So Tom, we know that teaming is really good for the government because it usually brings the best resources to bear. What, from your perspective, really constitutes a good teaming arrangement?
I think it starts, Hillary, with bringing the best to the customer, like you mentioned, but it really brings the core competencies of all of the groups and their depth and subject matter expertise together. So where Maximus might serve as a general contractor and might bring many of the skills that we need, we may not be great at communications and marketing, so I may turn to Lisa's company, and we may not have the depth in IT or logistics, so I may turn to Kelly's company, and that actually would be the best value for the government and would be a great teaming arrangement.
And good for you because you can win then.
Right,
Yes.
good for me, right, and deliver better.
Yes,
really.
right, lever those. And would you say from your perspective, Lisa, is it any different because you're a small contractor versus Tom's perspective?
Oh, no, it's all about the relationships. And what we're finding now, we've been prime and sub, and we have joint ventures as well. And working with the large businesses as well as the small businesses, it's setting up the agenda first, looking at who has what strengths and being able to put that together, spell it out on the teaming agreements, and then being able to carry forth to the government. Again, it's all about satisfying their needs and making sure that they see the results. And establish great relationships with large business because you do have a lot of the relationships and the longevity.
Yes,
as
and so
well.
that makes a
and
difference.
So it really
Yeah.
is a win-win.
And Kelly, from your perspective, I mean, even though you're larger, say you're larger than LeapFrog, what would you say in terms of there are situations sometimes where companies are sort of left at the altar, where you know a prime's ostensibly used you to win that contract and then you don't get much of the work. What are some of those situations that you've seen?
Well, fortunately, STS has never been in that situation.
Never be left at the altar.
Yes.
Okay, no one really wants that.
But I think the advice I would give for those situations, or the lesson learned, is to make sure that you have a clearly spelled out teaming agreement.
Yeah.
Any teaming agreement that shows work share is very good.
So get a good contract up front.
Yes.
And I would add to that, Kelly, that if we all understand the scope that you're working in, and that's clear that you own a portion of the scope of the contract, then it's very easy to work out the teaming, and it avoids confusion.
So the
in your
delineation would be
relationship.
in the agreement up front so that you know going into the contract what you're each going to do.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
And then what about some of the pitfalls, though? How do you avoid pitfalls?
Well, I think one of the things to both Kelly and Tom's point is getting that teaming agreement, and you see how you work together. usually when an RFP drops, you've been working together for a while. And so you know how you work beforehand.
So you've dated before you
You've
get
dated,
going down
yes,
to the
you've done
altar.
the courting,
yes, yeah.
and kind of this is kind of the prenups, if you will.
Yeah.
And then, so you realize what you're going to have to do. So spelling it out, getting that communication first and foremost is key.
Yes.
I think where some of the pitfalls are is that you race, oh, we're too busy to do it now, if you're too busy to do it before the award, it's only going to cause problems after the award. And that's been our experience. We've had very good relationships, and again, knock on wood, never really been left at the altar, but you spell it out beforehand and you keep the communications open.
During that time. Any other advice you give to our audience? Because they're thinking, should I team? Would I ever want? And there's always that negative aspect of being a sub. People always seem to want to be a prime, but nowadays, particularly with all the set-asides, there's a lot of advantages to being the sub. Have you been a sub in instances, Maximus?
We have been
Yes.
subs in instances, and I think there's a trend in government to award more small business prime contracts, and I think that could be good for both sets of companies, because the small may not be able to deliver the total contract scope, so they would team with a large and bring them on as a subcontractor. And it really is the same thing that Lisa and Kelly and I were talking about a minute ago, which is, as long as we understand our roles and our competencies, it works very well that way.
It does, yes.
Yeah.
And Kelly, what have you seen in terms of any pitfalls, anything internationally that may be a little bit different? Both you and Tom, I know you both have obviously international operations, and you mentioned in Germany. Have you teamed with companies outside of the US to bring different technologies or different services to the government?
We do work overseas, but it's all on U.S. government contracts, so we haven't teamed with non-U.S. companies.
You haven't at all. And how about Tom, has Maximus?
So my role is in federal,
Yes.
but we do team outside of the federal government. But I have to say, the federal government is extremely good at encouraging teaming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now even more so with the small business agenda from President Obama. We're seeing even larger set-asides now. And there are two that we actually work with fairly large companies that went small business, and they actually look to us to manage it, to prime it.
To prime it.
We've had experience working with them before, very positive, and when they realized that it was most likely, these contracts were most likely going to go small business, they encouraged us to submit what's called a sources sought notice to make sure that they had a better chance of winning, and ultimately we did both times.
And in terms of the current administration and in general, a lot of these mentor-protege programs have been implemented specifically to encourage smaller companies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you. Good morning, and again, I'm here with Lisa Martin, the founder and CEO of LeapFrog Solutions.
Good morning, Helen.
With also Tom Romeo, the president of Federal Services for Maximus. Good morning again, Tom.
Good morning,
And
Helen.
Kelly Terrien, and she's the president and CEO of Summit Technology Solutions. So great to have you all with us again. And everybody watching, we all know that we're in tough economic times, but also government contracting community. We've been hit hard in terms of sequestration. And Tom, looking at what Maximus is doing and looking at the environment, is teaming ever more important for you? And why would you say it is so?
It's critically important now, I think, with sequestration. And there are two reasons, really. One is that there are less opportunities to pursue and more competition in those opportunities. But two is, if you don't build the best team, you obviously aren't going to win the business.
So that contraction of the marketplace has meant that there's also a lot of hungry people out there. So even if you're the incumbent, any company that basically has an existing contract has to be careful, because there's somebody else who's going to want it even more than ever. Is that right, Lisa? Do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about results now.
Yes,
And really, again, making the government's mission matter. Each agency is going to be very different. And so to Tom's point, you want to make sure you have the best team, because the best team's ultimately going to be the one that wins.
And what about people fighting over those subcontractors they want to work? What about that in the marketplace? We talked about frenemies earlier, but does that happen? Do you see that?
Yes, a teammate today could be a competitor tomorrow. As Tom said, there's less work available and there's more competitors, so important to form that best team.
And
Yeah.
there's a scramble in the marketplace to get on the right teams and to pick the right teaming partners. So there's a lot more competition even as the teams form to compete than there ever has been before.
And there's a prediction that there's going to be an avalanche of procurement opportunities. Actually, we're speaking with Elliot Branch, head of procurement at Navy, and he said, yes, because the government still has to procure, and there's been all this stalling, there's been a kicking the can down the road. So you feel like a lot of people right now are determining who they should team with at the moment, getting ready for when those procurements open up the floodgates. Do you
Yes.
see that?
I see that quite a bit. We have 8 large businesses actually now that we're talking with on different teaming agreements right now because of that. We also see reputation. I know Tom and Kelly and I were talking about this. Reputation is key because as you use the word frenemies, you've got to make sure that what you say, you deliver on your promise, because you may be on the next teaming agreement or teaming opportunity. You want to make sure you're the one that's thought of.
Well, so on that note, since Lisa's talking about, she's looking at 8 opportunities from both sides of the aisle here. So now we have some large contractors here, and then you're a smaller firm. What are larger firms looking for? When you come across a firm like Lisa's and you say, we want to pick that particular one, what should all of our small viewers be looking at to differentiate themselves in your eyes?
Yeah.
Well, I would say number 1 is past performance. Have you done it before?
yeah,
Have you got a
agree on that.
great
Yep.
track record?
Right.
Yeah.
And how well have you done it? And as Lisa mentioned, reputation. You want to pick a teammate that is well known by the customer and they've done good work. I would say also financial stability. That's very important to a prime and to the government.
So that they can execute for the duration of the contract and they're going to be around.
And Hillary, another reason I think that we look for teaming partners often is, so while our work has mostly been in healthcare, we think we can help in areas like immigration and education. So we look for small businesses who may have done business with those agencies before that could help us understand their culture and how that agency
So
does
basically a
business.
niche where they're bringing that expertise that helps you in another particular agency. Yes, I can see that, yeah. And Lisa, what do you think in terms of members of the audience that are watching and they're saying, I'm a small contractor, I'm just like Lisa's size firm. What do you do from your side to say, I want to prove it so that I'm picked?
Well, it's funny that Kelly mentions the financial stability. That's the first thing that we talk to with the large businesses to let them know our Dun & Bradstreet ratings, our GSA audits that have gone through, our assisted services as they call them. We have exceptional ratings on that. It's key because you have to know that the small business, especially if they're going to be the prime, is going to be there for the duration of the contract, and that we do know how to manage the idiosyncrasies of each agency that we work with. Absolutely key. And so we actually have 10 questions to ask a small business for our large agencies, which they do get a kick out of because they appreciate it. So I really,
that's great.
I really admire
For a
your
communication company.
Yes,
that's right, yeah,
yeah. Have to.
Well, you've got to practice what you preach.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
It does help. It does help in the
It would be awful if you
business.
weren't. Well, actually, speaking on practicing what you preach, also I know that you have been involved in mentor-protege programs. What have you seen as a benefit of those, and what would you say to our audience members in terms of getting involved on either side?
Well, when you're looking at that, again, I think to Tom and Kelly's point, it may be to the benefit of a large agency that wants to get, or a large company that wants to get into another agency. Tom used the example of they do a lot of work with HHS, but their skill set may transfer over into an opportunity in DHS.
Right.
It's a great
And that's
way.
a great way to learn.
A great way to learn from a small business. It could be we have different contract vehicles. We may want to look at another contract vehicle that maybe Tom or Kelly has. So this could be a great mentor-protege opportunity. I know we do a lot of work with DHS, and they really encourage the mentor-protege programs.
They do. And what about, from your perspective, STS? When you've teamed recently, have your approaches to it changed due to sequestration and budget cuts? Have you taken any different tactics than you had before?
No, we haven't. I think that the basics are still the same. You want to know your teammates, validated trust, and we typically have teammates that we've worked with on many different efforts.
So really the teaming principles have stayed the same. It's just a question of looking at doing more cost effective, doing what the government wants in terms of cost. Tom, have you seen any changes though?
Well, I do think that the pressure, because the competition is higher for less business, that the pressure to find the right team that's going to bring the highest value to the customer becomes critical to you winning business.
So maybe more scrutiny than there ever was before. Would you say that? Would you say a little bit? Say more scrutiny, and you mentioned also up front it's those initial agreements that are in place.
Absolutely.
That are right, that delineate the relationship. Yeah. Kelly, in many areas of government contracting, contractors have actually seen lots of changes, dramatic changes actually, but teaming to some degree has stayed stable. I know there's a lot more scrutiny in terms of teaming arrangements. What other trends are you seeing in the future?
Well, Hillary, one thing that we're seeing is that the government wants to understand business teaming arrangements better. So teaming agreements are now part of most proposals. And recently we saw we not only had to turn in the teaming agreement, but we had to show where our small business partner would be working, exactly where that work share came from. We had to show it in the CLIN, sub-CLIN, down to the dollar level. So that's something that is very new.
Yeah,
So more delineations, more specificity in terms of the
exactly.
agreement. Yeah, Tom,
And
are you seeing
I
that
think,
same
Hillary,
thing?
that's part of a trend where the government is really trying to enforce more participation by team members and
So you don't
more
get
small
used.
business.
Right,
so you
yeah.
don't get used, right.
Yes.
More
Protection.
small business.
Protection for it,
right.
yes, yeah.
So it used to be that some of those things were plans. Now they're audited plans,
Right,
and they're
exactly.
really enforced.
And
So-
I think part of that too, to what Hillary was saying, is we have what's called the QASP, the Quality Assurance Surveillance Plan, in a lot of
Yes.
them. So they want to see how you're going to work.
Right.
When we did our joint venture for the LeapFrog Solutions Team Fled Smart joint venture, the clients, the contracting officers, wanted to actually see all of our teaming agreements. And since it's a separate business entity, they wanted to see the signed joint venture agreement. So again, a lot of items now are under scrutiny. They want to make sure that what you're saying is what you're doing.
And I
And
think
it-
that forces better relationships.
Yes,
You
it
know,
does.
really, if you don't define your how you're going to work together and build that trust at the beginning, and the government's going to come back and enforce it, it could cause problems if you don't do it correctly at the beginning.
And I think probably on both sides, on a small, for the sub and for the prime, it makes the relationship actually better because you know it's due to the oversight. It's not like it's you whining as a sub or something. It's not like you're whining as a small company to make this happen.
Right.
So on that note, what do you see in terms of, and I'd ask, I guess I'll start with you, Lisa, in terms of from a small business perspective, what would you give as advice to small businesses who are looking to team?
Well, number one, it's kind of a catch-22. They have to have the experience, especially when you're going to be working with the large businesses. Like I said, I always have my 10 questions to ask a small business to make sure that they do, when they go up to a large business or even a government agency, you don't go in saying, I'm a small business, or I'm woman-owned, or I'm an 8A. You go in with what you're going to deliver. And I think that is actually a common complaint with the small business officers as well. They get inundated with these companies coming in saying, I meet this criteria or that criteria.
Because
what
they
do
think
you
it's
have
like a
for me?
right. They
Yeah,
just
and
want it
it's
anyway
not.
versus
It's
going
not.
through the same things in
And
business
I hear that a
development.
lot from the large
Yes.
businesses.
It
I don't
is.
want you to hire me because of what quota I fill. I want you to hire me because
I'm
we're
good.
Gonna, I'm good,
Yeah.
and we're gonna be the differentiator for you to win that contract.
Right, and
And
that's the right way to go about it,
It-
Tom.
it is, because I think sometimes we have partners come to us and say that they just want to share because they're a small business.
And is that because they
it-
just want the contracts and the money? Like,
Right.
what?
Yeah.
What are you bringing to the table
Yeah.
for me?
and
Yeah.
then-
I
they
wouldn't
try-
work with them, so I don't know why you
No,
would.
right,
That's
right.
exactly right.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And what do you see in terms of then from the larger business perspective, what would your advice be?
To small businesses?
Yes.
Really, to come in with your value proposition and explain to me why I can deliver better to the customer because you're on my team.
So really the same
Exactly.
sort of similar advice if you're the large or the small, yeah.
Yes.
And one of the things we always love to do to introduce a topic that's very near and dear to Key Solutions, the force behind the show is Key Solutions is all about winning. Strategy, capture, proposal work that helps a government contractor win a contract. And so we're always interested in asking, what are your keys to winning? Kelly, I'd love to start with you. From the Summit Technical Solutions perspective, what would you say are your top 2 or 3 keys to winning?
Well, I would say having the trusted teammates, have those great relationships in place, have those detailed teaming agreements with roles and responsibilities defined up front so there are no surprises. And finally, be proactive. Do everything you can, if you're the prime or the sub, everything you can for that proposal to support reviews, everything.
Now, actually, when you say support reviews, in terms of proposals, there's a lot more gateways. There's black hat reviews, there's red hat reviews. I think a lot of companies don't realize the rigor that you have to go through in terms of those proposals. I know that Key Solutions works on every single aspect of that. Is that a proposal something that you see? Do you have those in-house, and how do you go about that? Lisa?
We do. We have them in-house. Well, it depends on the contract too.
Yes.
So if we're the sub, then the prime will be organizing that. If we are the prime, then we organize it. But we do. We have the different color reviews, pink team, red team review as well, and we work both in-house as well as outside, depending on how large the opportunity is.
Yeah.
We're finding more small business set-asides. It used to be 10, 20, 30 million over the life of the contract. Our largest is 75 million, and it's firm fixed price.
Yeah,
And so we did go out of house for quite a bit. As a matter of fact, we used your firm.
We did use Key
For pricing,
Solutions.
so yeah, small world.
Well, actually, people, I mean, it's all sorts of firms do go for outside support, not just surge support, some of the larger firms, but internally, I always say that firms either have one of two types of people they put on that proposal, either your best people, and then you're taking them off an incumbent who's now not happy, you lose all that chargeable time, you're putting the incumbent relationship at risk, or they put the people that are available on that proposal, and they're the dead wood. You don't want them on there either. So, but Tom, what are your keys to winning? What do you see from the perspective?
It really starts with aligning yourself to the customer's outcomes. And if you understand those outcomes and your proposal aligns to it and brings core competencies with partners that make that work, that's when it works the best. And I had a personal experience where we helped with the digital television conversion program for the country years ago. And really there was a lot of risk in the program, and the customer wanted to know that we were going to be there with them whatever happened during the program.
Yes.
And the win really was about a trust that we understood their challenge.
So you really got to understand, and that comes down to compliance as well. And Lisa, sort of exit question for you in terms of your keys to winning.
I think, again, to Tom and Kelly's point as well, too, you are obviously prepared, you know the relationship, you have the relationship with the agency, but you also make sure that every I is dotted and every T is crossed, because the contracting officers are the ones that actually look at the proposal.
Yes.
So what you don't want to have happen is go in knowing a solution and you're not following the RFP, and we've seen that happen in the past. Because sometimes there's some disconnects in communication between the program office and the contracting office, so you want to make sure you submit both.
And compliance can come down to, I mean, we've even seen companies where literally who haven't got experience in the compliance aspect, that the actual final response will be issued and it's 5 minutes late and it's discontinued. So they're out of the picture.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. That brings us to the end of another episode of Government Contracting Weekly. But I have to say that today's conversation about teaming is likely to be relevant to every one of our government contracting viewers. I'd like to thank Lisa Martin, the founder of LeapFrog Solutions, Tom Romeo, the president of Federal Services at Maximus, and to Kelly Terrien, the president and CEO of Summit Technical Solutions. Thank you for joining us. Most importantly, I'd like to thank you, our viewers, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. It's hard for us to believe, but we're already in our 9th month of Government Contracting Weekly. Key Solutions, the force behind the show, has received tremendous feedback, and we're gratified by your input and the feedback we've received to date. Nevertheless, we pride ourselves on being a learning institution, striving to improve the show's content. In that regard, I want to take this opportunity to encourage those of you we haven't heard from to reach out to us with your recommendations. We really respect the fact that, of course, you're extremely busy if you're watching this show, but we want the content to be rich and to be beneficial to you. You can reach us at Government Contracting Weekly. Thank you.
You've been watching Government Contracting Weekly, sponsored each week by AOC Key Solutions Incorporated. Government Contracting Weekly is the only television program devoted exclusively to the competitive and dynamic world of government contracting. For additional information, comments, questions, or suggestions, please write us at governmentcontractingweekly.com.